You already know her face. A woman reclining on a golden barge, her sails soaked in perfume, drifting down a river while the whole world stops to watch. Dark eyes ringed in heavy black paint, a crown shaped like a serpent, a beauty so overwhelming that two of the most powerful men who ever lived threw away their empires just to be near her. And at the end, alone in a marble chamber, she presses a small venomous snake to her breast and chooses death over surrender. That is the Cleopatra you know, the seductress, the temptress of the Nile, the most beautiful woman in the world. And almost none of it is true. The barge is half legend. The heavy paint and the serpent crown are a costume borrowed from a country that was not even really hers. The irresistible beauty is a story her enemies told, and her friends could not disprove. Even the snake is probably a lie. Here is the thing almost nobody stops to ask. Cleopatra lived and died 2,000 years ago, and nearly every word we have about her was written by the people who destroyed her. We are looking at a queen entirely through the eyes of the men who wanted her dead. And they did their work so well that we are still repeating it today. You know the face. You do not know the woman. Let's fix that. Welcome to History with Rohrmann, where history comes alive one story at a time. This is the beginning of a new series, 6 parts, on one of the most famous and least understood people who ever lived, Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, and the end of the ancient world she was born into. Because her story is bigger than a romance. Cleopatra is the hinge on which an entire age turns. When she was born, the Mediterranean was a world of many powers. Greek kingdoms, an old and glittering Egypt, and a rising, ravenous republic called Rome. By the time she died, all of it was gone, swallowed into a single empire ruled by one man. She was the last independent monarch of the old world, and she went down fighting for it. To tell her story honestly, we have to be fair to all 3 worlds she moved between: Egypt, Rome, and the wider Greek East. But before we can tell the true story, we have to clear away the false one. Because the myth is so loud, so familiar, so cinematic, that it drowns out the real woman completely. So this first episode is a demolition. For great myths, taken apart one by one. And when they fall, something far more interesting is standing underneath. Let's start with the biggest one of all. Myth number 1. Cleopatra was Egyptian. Picture the image in your head. The dark kohl, the beaded collar, the headdress of a pharaoh. Everything about the popular Cleopatra screams ancient Egypt, the land of pyramids and hieroglyphs and gods with the heads of animals. The problem is that Cleopatra was not Egyptian. She was Greek. Her family, the Ptolemies, were Macedonians. They came from the far north of Greece, the same rugged kingdom that produced Alexander the Great. When Alexander died and his generals carved up his conquests like a butchered animal, one of them, a man named Ptolemy, took Egypt for himself and made himself its king. That was some 250 years before Cleopatra was born. For nearly 3 centuries, her family ruled Egypt as foreign royalty, a Greek dynasty sitting on a pharaoh's throne. And they stayed stubbornly, proudly Greek. They spoke Greek. They read Greek poetry. They married within their own Macedonian bloodline, brother to sister, over and over, keeping the family Greek and keeping the family, frankly, a genetic disaster. Their capital was not some ancient temple town on the Nile. It was Alexandria, a brand new city on the Mediterranean coast, built by Alexander himself, and it was one of the wonders of the world. A city of white marble and wide boulevards. A harbor guarded by the pharaohs. A lighthouse so tall it was counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And the great library, the largest collection of knowledge on earth, where scholars from every corner of the Mediterranean came to study. This was Cleopatra's world. Not desert and pyramids. Greek marble, sea light, and books. Here is what makes her remarkable, though. In 300 years of ruling Egypt, not one of her ancestors had ever bothered to learn the Egyptian language. Not one. They governed a country whose people they could not even speak to. Cleopatra was the first. She learned Egyptian. She learned to present herself to her Egyptian subjects as a true pharaoh, and as the living form of the goddess Isis. The kohl, the Egyptian regalia, the divine costume, all of it was real, but it was exactly that, a costume. A deliberate political performance for the people she ruled. It was not who she was. It was a role she chose to play brilliantly because she understood something none of her family ever had. To hold Egypt, you had to speak to Egypt. So the Egyptian queen of the movies has it exactly backwards. She was a Greek monarch who was smart enough to wear an Egyptian crown when it served her. That is not a costume detail. That is the first clue to who she really was. Myth number 2. Cleopatra was the most beautiful woman in the world. This is the one everyone believes. A beauty so devastating it toppled empires. The face that launched a war. So let's look at the actual evidence. Because unlike the movies, we have coins minted during her own reign with her own portrait on them, approved by her own government. These are not enemy propaganda. This is how Cleopatra chose to show herself to her own people. And the woman on those coins is not a movie star. She has a strong, prominent, hooked nose, a sharp, jutting chin, a hard, intelligent, unmistakably commanding face. It is the face of a ruler, not a pinup. Some people, seeing those coins for the first time, are almost disappointed. Where is the great beauty? But that is the point. Read the oldest surviving description of her, from the Greek writer Plutarch, writing more than a century after she died. He says plainly that her actual beauty was not in itself remarkable. What was remarkable, he says, was her presence, the charm of her conversation, the sheer force of her personality, and above all, her voice, which he compares to a musical instrument with many strings, able to shift effortlessly from one language to another. She could talk to almost any ambassador who came to her court in his own tongue. Read that again. The single most famous beauty in human history was described by our best source as pleasant to look at and mesmerizing to listen to. Her weapon was not her face. It was her mind, her wit, her education, her charisma, her voice. She could walk into a room of the most powerful men alive and own it, not by how she looked, but by how she thought and how she spoke, which is a far more threatening kind of power. And it brings us to the myth at the very heart of all of this. Myth number 3. Cleopatra was a seductress, a devourer of men. This is the core of the legend. The idea that Cleopatra's real career was seduction, that she bewitched Julius Caesar, then bewitched Mark Antony, and lured them both to ruin with her body. A sorceress in a crown, collecting Roman generals. Now here is where you have to think like a historian and ask a simple question. Who is telling us this? Where does this story come from? And the answer is chilling. Comes almost entirely from Rome, from Roman writers. And more specifically, it can be traced back to one man and one purpose. It was war propaganda engineered by her greatest enemy to destroy her. That man was Octavian, the adopted heir of Julius Caesar, the man who would one day become the Emperor Augustus. In the final struggle for control of the Roman world, Octavian's rival was Mark Antony, a great Roman general who had allied himself with Cleopatra. And Octavian had a problem. He could not simply declare war on a fellow Roman without tearing Rome apart. So he did something cleverer. He did not attack Antony. He attacked her. He built a story, and he hammered it into the Roman public until it became truth. In this story, Antony was not a rival to be beaten. Antony was a victim, a good Roman soldier who had been drugged, bewitched, and enslaved by a scheming foreign queen. She was the threat. She was the monster from the east who wanted to rule Rome from her bed and drag it into Oriental corruption. Vote for war, Octavian said, and you are not fighting Antony. You are saving Antony. You are saving Rome from her. It was one of the most successful smear campaigns in all of history. So successful that Rome formally declared war not on Antony, but on Cleopatra herself. And so successful that it did not stop when she died. It became the official story. The winners wrote the histories, and in those histories she was forever the seductress, the corrupter, the exotic danger. So when you hear that Cleopatra was a man-eating temptress, understand what you are actually hearing. You are hearing the words of the man who needed the world to believe it so he could justify killing her. Nearly every ancient source we have on Cleopatra is Roman, and Roman means hostile. We are reading her obituary, written by her murderer, which does not mean she never used charm or romance or alliance. She absolutely did. But so did every ruler of that age, and the men did it too constantly, and we call it statecraft. When she did it, they called it witchcraft. The difference is not the behavior. The difference is that she was a woman and a foreigner, and she lost. Myth number 4 is smaller, but it tells you everything about how the legend was built. The props. Take the famous carpet. The story that a young Cleopatra, needing to reach Caesar in secret, had herself smuggled into his presence, rolled up inside a carpet, and tumbled out at his feet. In the movie version, it is pure seduction, a gift unwrapping itself for a powerful man. Look closer. First, our source does not even say carpet. It says a sack, the kind used for bedding or laundry. And second, think about what she was actually doing. She was in exile. Her own brother's soldiers controlled the city and wanted her dead. To reach Caesar, she had to be smuggled past armed guards, at night, hidden in a bag, gambling her life on a single meeting. That is not the act of a seductress. That is the act of a fugitive head of state making an audacious, high-stakes political move, betting everything on one roll of the dice and winning. The daring is real. The seduction is set dressing we added later. And the ASP, the serpent at her breast, the most famous death in ancient history. We genuinely do not know how Cleopatra died. The snake is one ancient tradition, and even the Romans who reported it were not sure. Many historians think it far more likely she used poison, which she is said to have studied carefully. Some think a hidden vial, a comb, a pin. What we can say is that her death was not a moment of romantic hysteria. It was a deliberate, controlled, dignified choice by a captured queen who had just learned she was to be paraded through the streets of Rome in chains, as a trophy in Octavian's victory parade. She refused to be his exhibit. She chose the manner of her own ending on her own terms. Whatever the method, that was not weakness. That was the last free decision of a woman who had run out of everything except her defiance. So, the Egyptian, the beauty, the seductress, the snake. Pull them all away, and who is standing there? A working head of state, one of the sharpest political minds of the entire ancient world. A ruler who spoke as many as 9 languages and negotiated with foreign envoys herself, without interpreters. A woman who inherited a rich but dangerously weak kingdom, a fat prize that Rome was already circling, and who spent her entire reign playing a nearly impossible game. How do you keep the last free kingdom of the old world alive when the most powerful military machine in history is standing over you, deciding whether to swallow you today or tomorrow? Her answer was cold and clear-eyed and brave. She could not beat Rome in the field. Nobody could. So she would get as close as possible to the men who ran Rome and tie Egypt's survival to their power. Her alliances with Caesar and then with Antony were not schoolgirl infatuations. They were the calculated moves of a stateswoman with almost no cards, playing them as well as anyone alive could have. And she came astonishingly close. At the height of it, she and Antony were reaching for control of the entire Mediterranean world. She came within one lost sea battle of pulling it off. That is the woman Rome could not allow to be remembered. A rival, an equal, a strategist who nearly won. Far easier and far more useful to remember a seductress with a snake. Which is the last question worth asking. Why did the lie win? Because the winner always writes the history, and Octavian was the winner. He became Augustus, the first Roman emperor, the most powerful man on earth, and his entire claim to that power rested on the story that he had saved Rome from a monstrous foreign queen. He needed her to be a villain. If she was just a clever ruler defending her country, then he was just an ambitious man who had conquered it. So the monster had to stay a monster forever, and then something even more powerful took over. Time. For 2,000 years, poets and playwrights and painters and, finally, filmmakers fell in love with the myth, because the myth is a wonderful story. Shakespeare wrote her. Hollywood crowned her. Each retelling made the seductress a little more beautiful, a little more dangerous, a little more romantic, and the real stateswoman a little more forgotten. The legend became a snowball rolling downhill for 2 millennia, and it buried her. But the real woman is still down there, and she is far more impressive than the legend. So here is the promise of this series. We are going to put the movie away and tell the true story in order from the beginning. And the beginning is not a barge, and it is not a snake. It is 300 years earlier, with a Greek general seizing a kingdom, and a city rising out of the sand on the edge of the sea. A city of marble and books and light called Alexandria. That is where the last queen of Egypt was made. That is where we go next. Forget the movie. Let's meet the real queen.